All right, folks. We're back.
Okay, just briefly, my name is John Bannon. And,
Okay, hold on. We gotta. Okay, we're all good.
We're good. Okay.
All right, great.
My name is John, and I'm a trader, a CTA, and it is my pleasure to introduce the next speaker here, which is Skip Sheen. Skip started his career in sales on the institutional bond desk at the Chicago Corporation before shifting into management consulting for financial services. After graduating with an MBA in finance from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, Skip went into marketing with stints E-Trade Option Express and is a marketing chief at Trade Monster. In 2011, Skip founded marketing consultancy 16 Wells and has served over 100 futures, options, and financial services clients over the last 12 years. Please give a warm welcome to Skip.
Really great, I gotta say, just to be in front of all of you again. It's been entirely too long since we got to do this, so thanks for having me. I think the short version of what I'm trying to accomplish in talking about the marketing aspects of AI use specifically is just what is there in AI as it exists today that's usable in marketing, and what can you do to pull it in and make your organization better as it stands today. I think there's an awful lot of, as others have said, there's a lot of software out there where they are throwing AI around like a bumper sticker on pretty much everything that they're doing. A lot of it's complete BS. And I have found the lion's share of it to be as close to useless or counterproductive as it can be. But there are three general areas where I think there's something that you can take out of it with where things are today, where you can get something that makes some sense for most of the businesses and the size of businesses that I've, in talking with many of you, I know we're dealing with in the NIBA world of futures. The first is personalizing your user experience, and I'll get into each of these in more detail. Second is to generate more content, or in some cases to repurpose content that you already have in another format into something else that you could use in another venue, whether that be taking a blog post that you have and turning it into social media somehow, or taking a video that you've done and turning it into something a little bit more usable for SEO, like a blog post, that kind of thing. And then finally, probably the highest use is just in doing data analytics. As we've kind of heard going through the other presenters today, sort of the earliest use of AI and the longest in the tooth so far is machine learning. And there's just been an awful lot more refinement and time that's happened over the years in using machine learning to analyze a big data set and figure out where's something that looks like it might be an anomaly. And I think all of us that have been in financial services as long as I know many of the people in this room have been, you end up getting very good at managing by exception. And what I've found machine learning and AI type analytics on marketing specifically to be good at is giving that same kind of management by exception way of approaching things. You know, what might the exceptions be? I'll get into it in a little bit more detail, but I think that it comes down to where are ads outperforming or underperforming? What times of day, what days of the week, what geographical locations, what demographic facets? You know, what kinds of things might you find that could be something where having a wingman that's analyzing your data for you all the time and kicking out anything that's like, this might be interesting, this might be interesting, this might be interesting. That it takes time for it to figure out what you care about. So at first it's particularly useless and annoying. But as you keep telling it, I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this, it starts to figure out what you're trying to do. And then it gets really good at diving in and giving you the kind of results that you want pretty rapidly. And I think that there are some things that you might not even realize is already doing that for you already today. And one quick sidebar too. I intentionally put too much text on these slides. If anybody would like them at the end, I've got my email on the last slide. Send me a note and I'll drop them to you so that you can pull that out. I'm not just going to sit here and read them to you, but I figure it gives you the ability to pull this later. I had a number of people say too much of a summary last time I spoke, so thought I'd give you a little bit more of a novel this time. So personalizing user experience, I think all of you have seen this in the roughest form before, just the way that you go to a website, you look at a pair of shoes and that pair of shoes follows you around the internet for a month. And that has really been pulled back into the experience on your own sites where, for example, if you know that a visitor to your site has been checking out stuff about NQ futures, you could change what happens on your homepage either the next time they go visit in the same session, or they come back the next day or a week later or something. You could have your headline and everything that you focus on your homepage talk about NQs if you wanted, or if you wanted to be a little bit less creepy than that, maybe say, equity index futures instead, and try to hit them with what they're interested in. Likewise, if somebody's looking at the oil futures, change it around and focus on your energy products. Those sorts of things do significantly raise the conversion rates that you get off of almost any offer you make. When you're talking more specifically to that visitor, you get better results from those visitors. It doesn't make things a completely different order of magnitude, I would say. The normal sort of response rate that you get from almost any online offer starts at 1% of the people who see it will do something. So if we're not talking about a huge number of people on the site, it might not be a noticeable difference. So the first thing I do when I start talking with anybody that's running a smaller firm or a website that does not have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of visitors on it is, let's also weigh what's the opportunity that you have here. If we were to get 4 times as many people to respond to an offer that we made on the site, is it really a big difference? Or is it something where we're going to put in a huge amount of effort to try to get these sorts of things to happen, and it's really only going to add 10 or 15 more new account applications that month? Might be better to just go put it into an advertising budget directly and try to get them the old-fashioned way, but with better ads and more people seeing your ads. So there's very much a give and take of, is everything else that you're doing in your marketing chain optimized? Okay, then let's start talking about personalizing stuff. But if you're doing a lot of the things that you can do to bring more people to your website, if you're doing the things that you can do to try to speak as clearly as possible about what your unique offerings are, what the differences are in your approach or pricing or service or wherever the points are that you try to make to your prospects, being able to personalize that kind of takes it to that next level. But it does depend on having a good foundation before you get there too. Okay. Let me just look here. The other thing that's kind of interesting about the personalization that can be implemented really rapidly is a lot of the email systems that are out there now, such as HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, even things like MailChimp that are more mass market, allow you to combine your website with your email system and tag the actions a user is taking on your website. And then you could change around the specific content that's sent to them in an email, where the same kind of thing that I was talking about before, of if their interest is in equity index futures, show them that. If it's energies, show them that. If it's ags, show them that. You can change around the content that gets followed up on, the content of the emails specifically, and even the paths that they might go down after they've submitted a form, in a very context-rich way, that will help you increase the open rates and click rates that you get on those emails. And that's I still find email to be about the best communication method that you have in this space. It's the oldest. It's also the thing that seems to keep working, and the people who are old and have money still read it. So let's take a look at an example. This is probably going to be a little bit difficult to see. I'll just explain it. This is a look at one of Google's example learning architectures, and it's how a system that we might take a number of different product data sources and put things in on one end and analyze it with a recommendations engine. There are essentially off-the-rack recommendations engines from Google that you can put in a data set and say, here's the kinds of things I'm looking for it to do, and it will spit out, based on the data that it finds to be correlative, the kinds of things that you would want to recommend on the other end. This is great. This is the kind of thing that when I was doing more research as to what was the current and the latest thing of what's happening in AI, I really found this stuff to be interesting. Here's the shortfall of it. Most of this is not connected to your data on one end or any system that you're using for marketing on the other end. And this is the problem that you have right now in most of the marketing AI sort of systems that you have, is that trying to connect specifically what's going on in your business with your customers or with their actions to a recommendations engine that then gives you something that you can do something with to get them to move towards an action is extremely difficult. There are platforms out there that will do things like this, but when we're talking about that kind of personalization, the big problem is that the middle where all of the fancy AI work is happening is really pretty terrific, but those connection points that make it high utility for our businesses is still a little bit weak. And so as far as this personalization stuff goes, my conclusion on that is that it does end up being a little bit difficult to do this, and it's probably the most intense amount of work for your organizations to try to take that and put it into place. Okay. The next area where I think you're going to see an explosion, there's already been an explosion of tools and things that are actually usable today, usually with the low price of $99.95 for your monthly subscriptions, is content generation tools that will kick out any number of things. I've seen tools that will, in less than 3 or 4 minutes, write a full landing page for an advertising campaign that will kick out over 100 different sets of ad copy for Google ads, where you could run mass multivariate tests on any number of things that you might want to do. They will write blog posts for you. They'll write social media posts for you. They'll create images for your social media accounts. But I think the lovely folks that were up here but talking about compliance a moment ago would tell you that most of that stuff is not going to get past them. It's a lot of it is really quite good. I have described it many times as this is sort of like that first year, associate that you bring on who is a very smart person who really has a lot of knowledge and doesn't know any of the rules that go along with being in this industry. So they mean well, and they can put you out of business if you don't watch what they're doing. And that's really where a lot of the generation tools are right now. But the fact is that where most people that I've run into get more stuck than anything on the content side is just trying to get rolling. if you've meant to write a blog post about a topic for the last 3 months and you've never gotten around to it because you just don't know where to begin, these AI tools can be really terrific at kicking out a crappy first draft. And then you've got something in front of you that you can edit and say, this isn't what I mean, but this is. And I don't like the way this article's going, but it should go that way instead. And you can end up getting a really effective way to get you to your goal, as long as you start with the mindset of this thing is not going to do it for me, but it's going to help me get rolling. It's particularly good in a lot of respects, like a lot of times when I'm trying to run a Google ad campaign, for example, where we're trying to figure out what's the specific combinations of headline and body copy and call to action that are usually very space constrained. 25 characters on this line, 30 or 40 characters on this line, and under 15 characters on this. There's not a lot of wiggle room to just think about what are all the combinations of words that will get these points across and come up with variations that I can rapidly go through and reject all the ones that don't really make the point. It does save me a lot of time to use these tools for that. So there's definite utility here. The prices on these are all over the map. They really try to go for enterprise type stuff. They, hundreds of dollars a month, and it'll do everything but, grate the cheese for your pasta. But it's, I think that the most utility I've gotten out of these things has really been stuff that was under $50 a month. And it was just, using ChatGPT, write me an article about what's driving this market today, and having it get started on something. I want to write a blog post about how implied volatility is being used to evaluate risk in the market. Something like that. It can give you a good kicking off point with even these really low priced things. The only thing I would say is if you're interested in trying something, do the free trials, use them for a day or two. If they're no good, quit. Don't, and put reminders on your calendars. Frankly, I always end up having to be like, remember to quit this thing and put it out there, because there's just there's too many of them right now, honestly, to really be able to stay on top of it. So I'm probably trying one or two of these tools every week. And most of the time I've ended up just quitting them and being like, okay, that was interesting, but not enough to keep me around. So I do think there's, again, an enormous need to fact check, run it through your own filters long before it even gets to the compliance department. But they really can help you if you're somebody that has troubles with writer's block, get some stuff out there. I did want to give you a couple of specific examples of some of the tools like what we're talking about. ChatGPT, I don't think I really need to go into. It's really gotten a lot of coverage. And it is quite good. And I have been surprised at some of the things it's able to throw out there. But two specific ones for marketing, Jasper AI is the one in front there. It really does a lot of interesting things around, for example, writing an email campaign for you. You could even say, like, I want to send 5 emails that are about this topic, and it'll kick out a usable first draft that, again, you need to polish up. There's also one called Lavender AI that is really less about marketing and more about a sales team. But I know that those lines can get kind of blurry in this room as to who's doing marketing and who's doing sales. So I put it in there just to give you another look at things that might be more applicable for you. All of them are good. You can find a million more. If you put in marketing AI into Google, you're going to have pages and pages of these things. But they all make it pretty easy to sign up, which is, I think, always a great lesson. Figuring out how easy these companies make it to sign up is a great step for all of us when we start looking at the first problem that we all have, which is somebody signing up for a new account. It's still the worst business process I've ever worked with. And I really would love to figure out a way to make it as easy as just sign in with Google and okay, here's the financial data we need. And I've never been able to get there, but it's kind of my white whale. So that's kind of the tool part. The other thing that I wanted to, I didn't put this in as a major item, but I want to mention it, is just one of the biggest problems that we usually have as in any kind of a marketing organization is having our email list just be old and stale and not being kept cleaned up. The webmail providers like Outlook and Gmail, Hotmail, all the Yahoo, everybody else that's used by the public, they track the open and click rates of the emails that you're sending to their domains. And they know if people want to get your stuff or not. And if you've got a single digit open rate and a infinitesimal click rate, your stuff is not going to get to the inboxes, even of the people who really want it. And that's a big problem. There used to be no disincentive to keep the 100,000 people who haven't opened an email from you in 10 years on your list. There's a disincentive now. Number one, if you've got bad results, it's going to just get more bad results. And you really want to use some of the tools. A lot of the email providers will start, they've built tools that'll suggest to you, hey, would you like to clean up your email list? Hey, would you like to unsubscribe some of these people, pull them out? Number one, it usually lowers your monthly fees because they're only charging you for the emails that are in there. So it can save you a little bit of money, not a meaningful amount, but it can really help drive those open and click rates up. There's more techniques that you can use for doing that, but it is a pretty good use of AI to analyze the people who are receiving emails from you. Okay. More on data analytics. I think, I've kind of gone through a little bit of this already, that machine learning is really the bulk of the benefit that you're going to get out of analytics. But predicting the outcomes that you're going to get from campaigns in advance really does let you build forecasting models of, if we spend this, we should get that out of the back end. If we do these things, we should be able to figure out how many actions we're going to get out of it. This is still something that a lot of organizations have a hard time just visualizing how to create that kind of a model. But it's pretty simple. It starts with, how many emails are we going to send? How many people are going to open it? Then how many click? And then how many do the thing that we want next? And then how many, all the different steps the whole way through. It ends up being, kind of the Jaws, we're going to need a bigger boat problem of, we need a lot more people to get here first. But as you get to the point where you've got that flow of people coming through, these analytics models can really do a great job of figuring out in advance of you going out and spending a significant marketing budget, what should you be able to see out of the back end of it. And that really makes the relationship between marketing and your CFO a lot better, when you can start giving them some idea in advance of, what is this going to return for us if we do it. So, what recommendations do I have for you in conclusion? Don't stand in place. Don't just wait for it to come to you. Go kick some tires and try these things out. I think it's really worth your time to do that. I think it'll surprise you both pleasantly and not so pleasantly what you see from it. But keep going even if you get something that seems kind of like crap. It's pretty good. The other thing is a lot of the tools that you're already using, like Google advertising, Facebook advertising, the email platforms that I mentioned before, they're already baking AI into the cake. And figure out what they're doing. Sometimes they've got generation tools inside of their email campaign builder, for example, or stuff like that. And then again, look at these things sort of like it's a summer intern, and it's there to help you minimally, but it's helpful. And doing what you can with it, it will usually take a few minutes, a few hours out of your day when you're trying to write something. So I'll leave you with this. I think that this quote was really pretty good, that, in the end, the human is still the pilot. The usefulness of AI in marketing right now is still, in my mind, very early stage, and you're really just looking for, how can I get one of these things to help me out? It's still about you and what you do with it. Okay. And there's my information. If you'd like the slides, or you want to just ask a question or want to do some work together, let me know. I'd be happy to help. Thanks very much.
You hit that mouse.
Which one do you want me to?
The middle one.
Middle one?
Just move it. There you go. Just don't want the screen.
Just move it a little bit, yeah.
There you go. You guys want.
Oh.
Okay, you don't get a break now. Because this is a, high-level conference and we have to devote everything to covering our topic. But now, in this session, we're going to deviate a bit because we've learned all of the positive and wonderful things that AI can do and how it will affect our lives. Now we have to complete the picture and discuss the risks inherent in AI. And since this is artificial intelligence, obviously cyber risk is a problem, or I should say, cyber risk is a concern. And today we are fortunate to have two industry professionals to guide the discussion who are extremely well versed in all the aspects of cyber. John Falsick, who is the founding partner of Versa, and which is a cybersecurity firm that focuses on the financial industry. And then we also are pleased to have Renato Mariotti, who's a partner in Bryan, K. Layton Haisner. Got that. Renato is a trial attorney where he advises and advocates for his clients in matters of digital asset and crypto. So, gentlemen, you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Carl. Deep breath, everyone. Last session. Soon we get to walk out and move around again. So we're going to have some fun. We're going to be talking about risks. So today we've heard some great information about what AI is, what it can do, skip suggestions of some of the ways we can use it for our business. And Renato and I are now going to be talking about some of the risks that we see coming with AI. Feel free to ask clarifying questions along the way. Otherwise, we'll plan on holding a little bit of time at the end for general questions. First topic we were asked to hit was, what are the bad actors in AI? And the answer is, to talking heads, same as it ever was. Security threats per se can be either external or internal, and the damage can come from either intentional threats or accidental, inadvertent mistakes by people. AI hasn't changed human nature, at least not yet. There are always some people interested in stealing data and money. Employees make mistakes, and we still have the same laws and regulations for AI that we had pre-AI. So those may be changing soon. At the moment, it's still the same rule book. However, AI offers new opportunities for bad behavior as well as good behavior, and it offers new ways for things to go wrong. Some of those risks are known, and others, as with every new technology, we'll only discover over time. I hadn't thought that might be a risk, which I've experienced some along the decades. To start, we're going to talk about 4 broad types of AI risks that involve data and usage. The first one is leakage of internal confidential information. 2 is unapproved use of external confidential information. We're going to hit the term that I love came up earlier of AI hallucinations or fake facts. And then when it also came up earlier, what about illegal or inappropriate questions or answers from AI? To be clear, there are more than 4 risks to AI. So sort of think of these as the initial or basic components. We're going to tag team. I'm going to hit the description of the first one. But one of the key risks is leakage of internal confidential data. Data flows to AI systems through the learning modules that they have. And I'm talking here about sort of the generalized foundational models like the ChatGPT in particular. And it's hard to know what data has been shared, and it's hard to know what a system has learned. And it's even harder to unlearn it or to delete it. And unless you have large budgets and are paying for and managing a private AI instance, you sort of have to assume that any data you provide to an AI system has the chance to leak so others can see it. Some facts to back that up. Cyberhaven, a cybersecurity company, reported that about 11% of its customers' employees, so not a large percent, had been using things like ChatGPT for their work. Okay, almost half of those had been inputting confidential data to the system. One of their lead examples was a senior executive entered info from the firm's strategic plan and said, hey, make me a PowerPoint presentation for the board. Great use of ChatGPT. Do you really want that public? And sometimes you don't know something explicit happened. Amazon got worried because they found information on ChatGPT responses that were confidential to Amazon. So they knew nobody else should know some of the things that were coming back and drastically threw flags for, hey, be careful about this stuff. So that's the first concern of leaking of internal info. Ron, you want to talk about some of the external data risks?
Absolutely. So I think we're all familiar with the concept of copyright, and it is something that often comes in popular knowledge and is discussed when there's things, whether it's stealing music or copyright battles over images. But look, copyright laws are the way that you reward the creation of new work. If you create something, you write, let's say, a novel, you write a poem, whatever it might be, that is copyrighted, and it protects, copyright law protects the right not only to make copies of that copyrighted work, but actually to distribute that work, and more importantly, to create derivative works. So for example, J.K. Rowling created some fantastic novels about Harry Potter. You and I can't write our own Harry Potter novels, even though it's a fantastic universe and some great characters, because that would be derivative of her work. So what we've been talking about ChatGPT. John has used that example. Well, ChatGPT was actually trained on terabytes and terabytes of information. There are currently lawsuits pending now from some people who believe, and they have the data to back it up, that their copyrighted material was used to train ChatGPT. Why does that matter? Well, using the example I just gave you, ChatGPT, you could enter to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you write a short story based in the Harry Potter universe? Well, ChatGPT, I'm sure, could do that as long as it has sufficient data to do so. But of course, that would infringe on the copyright that J.K. Rowling has over Harry Potter. So really, there's a concern about not only the use of AI being, training, using copyrighted data to train software that then can be used to assist others. But then, of course, there's also an issue with AI being used to create derivative works and infringe on copyright. So, that's an issue. And by the way, it could also be an issue in this space as well, right? You can have, for example, confidential data that exists inside an AI that says, hey, a user comes in and says, hey, develop a revenue model for a medium-sized IB. Potentially, you could have data that's existing there that's confidential, that's copyrighted, that's proprietary, and that's also being used to generate a derivative work for, let's say, one of your competitors. Similarly, and John mentioned earlier, the issue of hallucinated information. If any of you have ever used an AI prompt, whether you're using ChatGPT, which obviously has captured a lot of folks' imagination, but other prompts, whether it's Bing, other types of AI front ends, I'm sure you've had some hallucinated responses where you'll say, hey, name, the 20 best, players who played for the Chicago Bears, and maybe one of them really didn't. Or maybe you'll ask, who are the most prominent IBs, in the New York area or something along those lines, and there'll be some name you've never heard of before. Whatever data you're entering, there can often be data that, or whatever data you're requesting from ChatGPT or from another AI, there can be data that is generated that's not accurate, and it's because ChatGPT or the other AI is really looking at other sources of information and in the out there on the internet and extrapolating from that, and it might just misinterpret that data. So in other words, if you say list all the Harry Potter books, they might list a potential rumored book that people are hearing about that isn't real, something along those lines. And that has real world implications. It creates risks. And part of the reason I'm handling this topic is, as a lawyer, this has really come up in the legal field. I'm a litigator. I try cases for a living. I'm often in court. And one of the challenges of being a litigator is writing all of the paper that's associated with it. I have all sorts of associates who are working with me to try to draft various documents. There's a lawyer recently, Stephen Schwartz, who did that. And, he had limited resources, wasn't at some mega firm, had fewer resources. So he used ChatGPT to work up a court filing, and he submitted to a court in New York a legal pleading that contained a bunch of citations that turned out to be hallucinated. In other words, it looked totally legit. Like when you read it, it would be like Jones versus Smith, and it had a bunch of citations to a specific date and volume in a particular court reporter. But actually, when you went to, let's say, the particular page of the U.S. reports, it turned out the New York Court of Appeals never made that decision, right? It was just totally made up. It ended up becoming an issue because, of course, the judge, took a look at those citations, confronted him, and ultimately he had to admit that he used ChatGPT, and that he affirmatively said that he was unaware that the content in ChatGPT could be false, and he and his partner were fined. And they obviously suffered a big reputational hit because as lawyers, we actually, although everyone mocks us usually for our lack of candor and truthfulness, we actually have professional responsibility standards that require us to be accurate and truthful when we're talking to a court. We put something in a court filing, and so you're subject to fines when you don't follow that.
Ouch. More ways that AI can go wrong or do wrong. Inappropriate usage, by which I'm referring to illegal requests or getting bad responses. And just, we're going to flow some of these into some industry specific things later. So this is sort of setting the groundwork. Europol, not Interpol, sorry, reports they've documented criminals using ChatGPT, asking questions like, how do I make a pipe bomb? Or how do I make cocaine? Okay. ChatGPT and other systems do have safeguards, but prompt engineering, I believe the term was defined earlier, the way to work prompts can break things down in ways that bypass those. So you wouldn't get, hey, how do I make an atomic bomb? But if you broke it into a bunch of steps, what does a trigger look like? Or I'm writing a novel, explain this and this. You can start pulling information that the system is not, it doesn't have context. So it doesn't recognize, I said I can't answer that question, but I gave you 1 through 10 steps when you asked separately. AI can also directly support criminal acts. I'm going to take a half step to decide to focus on the cybersecurity risk here. Business email compromise attacks are one of the biggest risks we see at the moment as a cybersecurity consulting firm. It's where you get a faked email saying, oh, about to go on vacation. I needed to get this payment out. Can you send it out by the end of business today? And somebody responds and they send it out because it came straight from the CEO's email. But it wasn't really the CEO's email. those start getting very textured, where they'll use spoof accounts that look like the CEO. They'll find out what the CEO is doing. So it'll say, hey, before I go speak at the NIBA conference this afternoon, because that's on the web, these get a lot of granularity. There have been the most detailed cases, $35 million stolen by an AI system that impersonated the director's voice. The guy got a call from his boss reciting facts he knew, and it gave some information he didn't, such as the payment details. Yes, sir, I'm on it. The person didn't know. It was only after the money was gone and they've still been able to pull it back. Those will be more common in the future. The technology is cheap, it scales. We get the scam phone calls, hello, I'm a robot. But when they start impersonating somebody's voice and it really is their voice, be careful if it doesn't sound right. So that was it for the 4 types of risk, and then we're going to jump into some industry things. So it was leakage of confidential data internally, misuse of external data, the AI-generated fake data, and inappropriate use, either asking for things you shouldn't or getting answers that you shouldn't really get. Now we're having fun. We wanted to talk about some of the future risks that might be our industry specific.
Absolutely.
So you start off.
All right, yeah, and there's a lot of them. Whenever you have a topic like this one, we're always looking, I think, ahead, right? This is not a part of our toolbox that people are using all the time in this industry right now. But there's some obvious ways in which AI can be used that create significant risks. And one that really, I think, jumps out at me as a potential risk is the use of AI to monitor customer activity, right? We all have a responsibility to at least some extent to be supervising what our customers are doing, potentially engaging in misconduct using our services, right? Well, what if we have, and we're starting to employ AI to do that? What if some of you decide to use AI as a way of understanding what customers are doing? Well, if an IB is using AI to monitor customer trading activity, and the system is identifying trading strategies of clients, I guess as a starting point, first of all, how can that information be used or misused? I mean, first, could a regulator hold you responsible for misconduct by a customer that you are not actually aware of, but your AI is aware of? Does your AI's knowledge and understanding of what your customer is doing imputed to you? I mean, you could imagine certain regulators taking that position. It's not like they're always very fair with the positions they take with us. You could also imagine a circumstance where, I don't know, an employee might discover and understand trading strategies that customers are engaging in, potentially use or misuse those in certain ways. Maybe, I don't know, front running a customer or perhaps gaining some sort of advantage that they're passing along to others. I think another question is, who owns that data? In other words, you're monitoring that activity. Right now, you might just be monitoring it in a sort of high level sense, but if AI is monitoring it and developing a kind of complex understanding of what your customers are doing, who owns that data, that analysis that the AI has developed? Who owns the trading strategy? So a lot of, I'd say, interesting questions there. Another question is, another kind of use of AI, and we're starting to see this a little bit in in a very rudimentary way, is the use of AI as a replacement for human beings in terms of getting information from our customers, right? I'm sure we've all been to websites and there's a pop-up that's like, hey, I'm Jane, how can I help you, right? And Jane doesn't actually exist. Jane's a AI, but you're putting in data and, Jane is responding. We even get that a lot of times nowadays when you make a phone call, right, to companies. There's an AI that is interacting with you, trying to understand where to route your request or what information they can give you to reduce the number of incoming requests to the human beings to lessen that load. So if an IB, for example, is using an AI chatbot saying, how can I help you to your customers, what is happening with the information that is being supplied by your customers? If your customer is like, how do I engage in wash trading? Or I want to spoof the market, and you're getting those sort of questions, I mean, that's obviously an obvious example, but if you're getting that sort of stuff from your customers, are you monitoring all of that in real time? Are you digesting and understanding exactly what input is going in from the AI? If the AI is getting information from your customers, who is responsible for that knowledge? And then you may be held responsible for what the AI is telling your customers they can and cannot do. So in other words, if the intent ultimately it matters from a regulatory perspective, are you held responsible for the intent of your AI? So how, I think the question for all of you is, we're trying to throw things out there, because that's the idea of a conference like this, is to sort of increase our imagination, have a thought process here, is how should all of us in this industry monitor AI customer interactions? What should we do with that data? How do we monitor the direction that's going from the AI to the customer, and vice versa?
Well, so Nana's example was what responsibility you have for questions the customer asks. How do I launder money? And how do I do this? Oh, well, I can help you with that. If they prompt it differently. The flip side of that is the same. What's the responsibility for the answers that are given? This gets some of the trading dynamics. If I'm a client and I want to get a large order through a relatively liquid market, and AI comes back and says, 2,000 by 2,000, you want to get 10,000 cleared? Really should do is put a 25,000 lot on the other side of the market, a couple ticks away. That'll make it all just seem that much more liquid, and you're much more likely to get filled. Yeah. Ooh. Christine, what was your comment? What if your AI is trained by watching the Wolf of Wall Street? Those things work. Those things aren't legal. Would the customer know that that's not legal? Would you know that that's not legal if you weren't part of the advice? The client says, hey, I've got the capital, I want to do a large order here. And then, something that obvious you might, but a more sophisticated AI might say, I'm going to bid in neighboring contracts because I know you're not, for some reason, you're not supposed to do the same outright, but do it as a spread. And it's a little harder to detect, a little easier not to get noticed intentionally or not. But those are things that, as the tools, hey, how can we help you, start getting provided by these white labeled engines, those will be challenges along the way for who's responsible. Okay, we've got a little bit of time on that. One of the questions of responsibility came up earlier. I used to do fully automated algorithmic trading. Got in trouble with the CME one, and statute of limitations has run out, by the way. Got in trouble with the CME once because late Sunday night energy market quotes, not a lot of people quoting markets, two-sided, most of the people weren't there. Our algos submitting orders, saying, nope, not enough depth, backing up, going back in, backing up, going back in. And the exchange came in and said, wasn't legit. You didn't have a good enough ratio of volume to quotes, rather than saying, thank you for providing some liquidity in oil futures on a Sunday night. It's like, no, the other way. We were able to walk through in mind-numbing detail how our seeming flashing was in response to this change, then that change, then we step back. We've got a rule, need to count of 4 orders to be legit. Went down to 3, we pulled back. Maybe we shouldn't have had that, but that's what we did. We were able to convince them that while we violated the rule, it wasn't intentional, and thank you for making markets on Sunday nights went through. An AI-based algorithm, almost by process, is opaque. We're not going to know what the underlying logic is. So the exact same situation, somebody come in and say, so what are you doing? Like, I don't know, it's what we always do. Well, this time it was doing stuff. Did something change? I don't know. I'm anticipating personally the question, will regulatory or exchange standards change? That there will naturally be an increased focus on identifying prohibitive behavior and penalizing that, because the I can explain why will become harder to do if you're depending on these technologies that are, who knows what the general learning model was.
Yeah, I think just to kind of hook onto that for a minute, part of what I was back when I was on the enforcement side and I was investigating people who are allegedly engaged in activities like that, the focus was to look at the algo, and so you could literally go through the logic and understand exactly how that algo is working. And I think what you're talking about, and really the beauty of AI, right, is that it's acting in a way that we can't just look at a piece of code and understand that, but it has opportunities and risks, right? An opportunity there is like, hey, the AI is doing things, beyond what the programmer might have intended, or differently than the person who created it might have intended. And that can be potentially an excuse you can use if the regulator comes calling, because it's like, hey, I had no idea that the AI was going to do that. But if enough people use that excuse, you can expect the regulators to start coming up with standards that are going to hold us responsible for how our AI functions, particularly if the AI is engaging in risky activity.
Cool. Do you want, is it clarification? You're about to wrap up and then questions.
About to ask for questions.
Okay, first hand noticed, first in the queue. So our description of the sort of fundamental AI risks profiles that we gave and are kicking out ideas about some of the plausible future uses and some of the risks we see where those aren't so much trying to predict specific implementations, but get people thinking about, ooh, and what would this be like? You know, how might that work? Whatever they are, new uses and applications of AI are certainly coming, and they're going to have their own risks along the way. So we expect the categories we identified to be helpful, but you know, your experiences may be different.
So earlier, you at the very beginning, John, you talked about people using confidential data in ChatGPT and it causing problems. For the past 15 years, companies have signed up for all kinds of software as a service products that have similar issues, but despite the fact that I've been to hundreds of software as a service conferences, either as an ex-Paul attendee or as a speaker, I've never seen the issue discussed. What are the implications of having software as a service there, and are they similar to what you just said? And it's just that we don't talk about it.
I think they're different, and the idea is that it's not a pooled environment. Do you have some specific software? Do you have some specific?
Service, sometimes it is. Data can be shared between companies or customers and Salesforce.
If you designate you want to share your Salesforce data, that may be a choice. The default isn't everybody sees your data in Salesforce. You know, not everybody. I use Google Office Services. Actually, they keep changing their name, but yeah, our Google Drive. Yes, it is in a generally hosted environment. You can't get access to it. I've got multi-factor authentication. I've got restricted user access. So the distinction between you can allow access to your data or the default or the choices to not allow it is very different than a generalized learning tool that once you've provided it to a public area, it's like posting to, say, a Facebook with, you know, in public mode. Everybody can see that then. So it's no longer a surprise birthday party. Does that answer make sense?
We'll talk after.
Okay, sounds good. Yes.
It was just a comment. Actually, they will not reveal what they're doing. On the back end, the robots still look at your data. So, I mean, they might not share it with others, but they know what you have. So that's all. And another comment, there are technologies to mitigate a bit, like you can use different models and you can run multiple times through those models to see if the result is the same. Also, the GPT private solutions are sometimes you can run it through a business logic like other steps out of the GPT, whatever, even if it's local. So let's say if you have on-premise secure GPT, open source or whatever mechanism, you can run multiple other steps out of that, the result, to make sure that that doesn't go straight in the client data or in the public.
Okay, yep, those are good points. Yep.
I'm going to try again. My question earlier, and it gets to this concept. You know, you said, I wrote down, you know, the beauty of AI is we can't understand what's going on in the black box. But isn't that, you know, if we are starting to use it as organizations, I mean, we still have a responsibility today to understand what it's doing, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, you know, do the controls that we think about, software testing and traceability, you know, and the role of compliance in the build out of these systems, to me, those remain the same, but I'm trying to understand what's that inflection point when those controls are no longer strong enough, and now we've got a whole new way of thinking about risk management. And I'm sort of on this curiosity journey to hear from experts to get their thoughts on this, because
okay.
I haven't in a lot of conferences heard interesting answers yet. So let's see what you guys think.
Let me do the software side, and then you have a response provider. started doing a bunch of reading a few months ago, so it's not top of mind, about ways to do the acronym is SDLC, the software development lifecycle, and how that has to vary for a black box model. And other things that are very much of concern to sort of AI models, they call it biases. It's like, oh, Asians aren't good at basketball. We can prove that. The answer is no, that's a correlation, based on, that you have to start digging in that a mathematical relationship will come through and say yes, and you have to start changing the information like, well, what if I look for players in, say, China? Oh, they're great at basketball. It's like, okay, what's the learning model and how do you control for those? So the use of the information starts guiding the design and the checkpoints along the way to make sure that you have more confidence, even though it's not explicit, that the answer is something you can believe. And it's something similar to the general, like you were mentioning, back testing and general models. I mean, that went back before AI was a thing, 10 years ago. We're looking for correlations. You can find false correlations because they're really there, but they're not really causal as you start drilling into them. You feed with some data and then you test on later data, or you're doing in and out of sample testing, all sorts of rigorous statistical tests for that. Those skills are going to still exist, but it's going to be a little different because you can't see things the same way. Do you want to have a non-software modeling answer?
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, look, I'll give you a legal answer because I'm a lawyer, so I'm looking at it from a legal perspective. I mean, I think one thing I would just say from a lawyer's perspective is that the issue of responsibility and who's responsible for something is a really important feature in the law. And I think one open question that's going to get resolved, and I hope you kind of saw it underlying a lot of the examples that I was giving, particularly when we were talking about future-oriented activity, is who is responsible for analysis that is done by AI, who's responsible for activities that are undertaken by AI. When I say AI, for example, is directing activity or providing, aiding activity or giving information or using information or adapting information, I think what is going to likely happen, not where the law is now, but where I see it going, is I think ultimately the law is going to hold either the users or the developers of AI responsible for how AI, uses, develops, modifies, all of those things that we've talked about. The danger zone that I think, and the reason we're kind of having this discussion here, is I think there's a very good chance in our particular heavily regulated industry that users, i.e. us, the people in this room, end up becoming responsible.
We're going to have to stop it there. We have a cocktail. We have Mike Burton.
I am not a cocktail.
Thanks to John and
I'm Mike Burke, president of the NIBA. I'm also the independent introducing broker rep to the National Futures Association Board of Directors. Before I lead you all next door to my favorite part of the conference, I have a few thank yous that I need to say. Thank you to today's speakers and moderators for their participation. It's been a great program. I'd also like to thank today's conference sponsors, Mike Coglianese, CPA, Midland Trust, Greenberg Traurig Law, the CME Group, and of course, DePaul University, our host today. I would also like to recognize the NIBA annual sponsors, whose support is so important to our organization and allows us to put on programs like we did today. They are CHS Hedging, Dorman Trading, RJ O'Brien, ADM Investor Services, Midland Trust, Wedbush Futures, Michael Coglianese CPA, Straits Financial, Cunningham Commodities, and StoneX. I'd also like to recognize today's conference committee for putting on such a great program. There's a number of them, but whoever's in the room, if you'd raise your hand, I would appreciate it. Great job, and thank you very much. housekeeping issue, today's program was taped. It will be on our website shortly. The website is theniba.com. While I have your attention, should any of you wish to get involved with our organization, on our website, theniba.com is a list of directors. Please feel free to reach out to any of us, and we or Melinda will find a job for you to do. In closing, thanks to all of you for attending today. It was a great program, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Thank you.
Yeah, no, she's just like that. I was using the computer and something stopped working. So she pulls up the mouse, it stops, like the cable has just been severed.
Ready?
Looking behind.
Want me to start? Sure. Good afternoon, one and all. My name is Carl Luft, and I'm an emeritus professor of finance at DePaul University. And I'm also a member of the NIBA advisory group. It is my pleasure here today to welcome Dean Ba, who will open the conference for us and welcome us all to DePaul University.